What's going on, guys, and thanks again for being here. Today I'm actually super excited again to reintroduce to you guys a brand new release from Godox. This is the Godox Knowled M600Bi bicolor 730 watt LED light. As a matter of fact, 3 or 4 months ago I also have reviewed the Godox Knowled M600D. Today is actually my third day that I'm actually working on this video, and I feel very privileged and very special to be the first channel to review most brand new releases from Godox, such as the M600D, the EOL 150 Mark II, and also the M600Bi. I think this video is going to be one of the most complete videos for you to watch regarding the Godox M600Bi, because it's not going to be just a guy talking about the light here in a tiny little room with the light shining on the wall there. I actually have the opportunity to take this light on a real set and with celebrities such as Eric Roberts, who needs no introduction, and also with Aly Mang, which is a New York actress. So in this video, I'll try my best to provide the best information and things that you really want to see about this light, actually with the light in action. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also going to be using this light at its full potential in this large area, which measures about 2,700 square feet, my photography studio, in which a light like this is designed for. Plus, I'm going to be utilizing everything, the reflector, the FLS10 Fresnel, the barn doors, show you the cases, everything here. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. And the usual disclaimer, Godox sent me this light for me to test it out. I don't get paid to say anything here, and this video is not sponsored by Godox, and all my words and opinions, they are my own. So I'm going to start straight to the point with something that actually intrigued me with this light, because this is a bicolor light, and normally when we actually share the CCTs, the warm and cold LEDs, you're going to have a little bit of a loss in brightness because, again, it is a bicolor. For example, the M600D is a daylight only, but this light is actually equally as bright as the M600D. What they told me, they use a new set of LEDs here, the latest technology or whatever that is, which makes this light equally as bright as the M600D. So if you want a bicolor light, you're not going to lose 1% of brightness. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about by at least measuring with the light meter so you can see with your own eyes what I'm talking about here. I'm pretty sure you're already familiar with the M600D, but if you're not, it's the same exact construction from the head all the way to the balance. The only difference is that this is a bicolor light and the other one is a daylight only. Other than that, it's the same cable, same ballast, same everything. So I'm going to start with the construction of the head. If you've never seen this light before, it's made of metal from top to bottom, left to right, except the front and the back. So the front and the back is made of plastic, is a technopolymer plastic or an ABS plastic, which almost feels like metal. So everything here is extremely robust, nothing is going to break. And some people might complain that the actual ratchet knob of this head is actually made of plastic, but again, it almost feels like metal. I don't think this is going to break, because on that set that actually took this light, I actually have to tighten really tight when I actually have the Fresnel plus the barn doors, which makes this whole load extremely heavy. And this light had no issue whatsoever holding this whole load right here. So I think you're going to have to be very creative to actually manage to break this ratchet knob, in which, in my opinion, I actually worked on a 14-hour day of shooting, and this knob actually performed perfectly, just like the M600D did. As far as versatility goes, they thought of everything. This is actually a junior pin stirrup instead of the usual thing only designed to go on a light stand. So you can actually mount this light on a combo stand. Right now I'm actually using this light on a regular stand, which is a heavy-duty stand from B&H. The brand is Impact. It's totally fine as long as you use the ballast with the light only, possibly with the reflector, no problem. But I highly recommend that you use at least a C-stand for a light like this, especially if you're actually starting to load the Fresnel lens plus the barn door, which is going to make this whole front load here extremely heavy. Now, the best stand that I recommend for using a light like this, especially fully loaded, will be a combo stand which features a junior pin mount. If you're new to this channel, the type of videos that I make here, they're not just a review, they're actually pretty much towards a workshop kind of thing, which is pretty much the whole manual of the light and a bunch of other things here, and also includes some filmmaking techniques and lighting tutorials and audio, pretty much anything that's going to be useful to you. Everything in this light is very durable and very well made, especially the ratchet system here, which also includes a clutch system, which means, again, anything that you want to load in front of this light can be a huge 120 centimeter softbox, or for the Fresnel light, the barn doors, everything is going to stay where you leave it. When you have this light fully loaded, you're going to appreciate what they did here hardware-wise. It feels very solid. Every time you need to pivot this thing up and down, everything feels great. The way they built this, you're going to have no problem installing any modifier. This is the Godox QRP120, which is a 120 centimeter softbox or 4 feet wide, and this weighs in excess of 7 pounds. So when you actually adjust it, you can actually quickly tighten right here and it will stay. And again, very quickly, whatever position they want. And as you can see, it can go all the way up like this, or all the way down like that. And keep in mind, you can actually tilt this 45 degrees this way if you want, for some reason. So when you actually set it, you can forget it. I'm gonna tap it in here. It doesn't go anywhere. This light, I would say, is a pretty considerable investment. So if I take this light outside, especially summertime, the last thing that I want to see happening with this light is 150 bugs crawling up on the front element on the LED lights. And no exception for the MD series, they still put a front glass element which prevents any stain or any damage on the LED. Just like the FV or the UL series, most lights that Godox make, you're going to be finding a front glass element, which is great. Here's the crazy thing about these high-powered lights. For example, this light is 730 watts. I can imagine what a 1200 light will feel like, but when I was actually on set, I was using the light with the reflector. I just turned the light slightly and very quickly this way so I could feel the beam in my face. It actually hurts. It was for like 2 seconds, but the heat that comes out of this light is absolutely insane, which, by the way, when we're actually using this light with the Fresnel, for example, every single time I actually power off the light, which was used for at least, I would say, 45 minutes, you're going to see a warning message that the ballast and the light needs to cool, which you should never ignore, because what happens is the ballast has a fan as well, and this whole kit needs some time to cool off, so never unplug this light until this message is gone. If you don't do that, you're possibly going to damage some coils, some capacitors inside this ballast, and possibly the cob chip as well. Now, one thing to remind you, this is a 700 plus watt light. Every time you use a Fresnel lens or anything that accumulates heat inside the light, the heat accumulation is ridiculous. I was actually using this light on set, sometimes for a whole hour and a half without shutting off the light. But my experience with this light was, it doesn't matter if I was actually running this light for a whole hour and a half or 15 minutes, cranked up to 70, 80, or 100%. The warning message that appears on this ballast, some people say they might last about 3-4 minutes. In my case, it only lasts for about 3-4 seconds. I was actually trying to get my phone real quick to show on the YouTube video the actual message that comes here, but the message actually disappears very quickly. I could safely power off the ballast. I waited another 15 minutes to use the light again, and there you go. Now, moving on to the ballast, everything you see is made of metal except the top and bottom, and also, of course, the V-mount plates. You're dealing with electricity, so it needs to be plastic, which does not conduct electricity. And for a light of this price, I'm pretty happy to see that they actually provide a power cone connector, which is the most robust way to connect this light, instead of the cheap little desktop with the 3-prong that you see around. And the gauge is extremely thick, and this power cord is pretty generous inside. It measures at least 15 to 20 feet. There are 3 ways to power this ballast, of course, via AC and DC with a V-mount system, and the third way would be if you actually have a huge power bank capable of supplying 48 volts to the 48 line-in jack right here. You can actually operate this light at full 100% brightness, the whole 730 watts out of here, when you actually use this option. You can actually use your phone with a Godox Light app, but I actually prefer this optional purchase, the Godox RCA6 remote, which does everything that I want. You can actually power the light on and off. You can control the color temperature. You can go from 0 to 1% all the way to 100%. So this remote will do everything. Now, keep in mind, if you're actually using one single V-mount battery, you notice that the light is not going to be powered if you actually insert a V-mount battery on the black little release button here. Make sure you actually slide the V-mount battery on the yellow release, otherwise the ballast is not going to power on. And also the brightness is going to be limited to 20%. And if you're using 2 V-mount batteries, the brightness is going to be limited to 40%, but more on that later. When you're actually using this ballast via AC, there's no problem leaving your V-mount batteries attached. Nothing's going to happen to them. But the thing is, when you're actually ready to switch to DC power, make sure you actually power this off and unplug the cable. Otherwise, you're going to have to reboot the ballast anyway, because the circuitry has to change for DC and also for AC. Now, one very important thing that's in the manual, by the way, to keep in mind is that when actually using 2 V-mount batteries simultaneously with this ballast, if the other one is about to die or very low charge, like 2, 3, 4, 5%, and this one here happens to be 100% full charge, this ballast is not going to work properly. It needs to detect enough juice from either one of the batteries for the ballast to work properly. So make sure you actually test your gauge and keep an eye on the actual status of the battery. According to Godox, this light is actually capable of charging at least a single V-mount battery as long as you actually hook it up on the yellow tab on this side of the ballast. But unfortunately, with the M600D and with the M600Bi, I could not charge my V-mount batteries. I didn't see anything happen. I actually let the V-mount battery here in excess of 4 hours, and the status of the battery was the same. So therefore, as of right now, I don't think this ballast is actually capable of charging a V-mount battery. This ballast features a USB jack for firmware updates. Keep in mind there is no power coming out of this USB, so if you're actually using other devices that need some charging or some power from this USB, that's not happening. This USB is only for doing firmware upgrades, nothing else. Now, here's one of the most important parts of this video, because I actually took this light on a real set and utilized this light at its full potential. I'm a full-time filmmaker and I do this for a living, and I cannot imagine myself doing anything else. I was actually hired to shoot as a DP, which I'm not authorized to disclose anything about this movie. It's gonna be coming up in 2023. All I can tell you is that I actually took this light on a set. That shoot was actually a 14-hour day, but it made it less tiresome because everybody was very fun to work with and everybody was extremely professional. And I actually have the opportunity to meet in person Eric Roberts, who needs no introduction, and also the other celebrity, which is Aly Mang, which is an actress from New York. In the example number one, I actually had this ballast set to 60% across a very large room using the FLS10 and the barn door bouncing off a white reflector, and the shutter was set to 1/60th of a second, aperture f4, and the ISO 500. In the example number two, the ballast was actually set to 70% across another large room, bouncing at a white reflector disc with the FLS10 at full spot mode again. And I had the barn door there just in case I wanted to open the Fresnel to full flood mode. And the shutter was set to 1/80th of a second, the aperture was f4.5, and the ISO 640. In the example number three, the actor was actually very close to the light, so I actually had the ballast only set to 9%, bouncing off a regular white reflector. And the shutter was set to 1/80th of a second, the aperture was f4, and the ISO was 640. In the example number four, the ballast was set to 40%, shining through a window with the FLS10 at 20-degree spot to light a scene outside. And a white 5x7 white diffuser was used to diffuse the light. The shutter was set to 1/80th of a second, the aperture was f4.5, and the ISO was 640. And this is an example of some footage of the rehearsal before we actually put the actors on the green screen. We were trying to test the light. In this case, the Godox M600Bi was set to 100% double diffused. And I also have to shoot a couple clips in 240 frames with the Canon R3 just to test also for some flickering of this light, which, by the way, technology nowadays, none of this light flickers anyway. And in this case, I actually have to crank the light to 100%, which requires a lot of power from this light, and sometimes I actually have to use 2 or 3 600 watts depending what I'm doing. Now, just in case you actually use this light indoors, I'm going to give you even more examples here in the studio, how to use this light in several configurations using the reflector, the barn doors, the FLS10 Fresnel, and everything else. All right, here's the studio test that I'm actually making with the Godox M600Bi. I'm using the Godox QRP120, which is a huge 120 centimeter softbox, or about 4 feet in diameter. So I actually have the minimum settings for a studio, just like any other regular light. So the ballast is currently set to 10%. This whole video is shot in 30 frames per second. The shutter is 1/60th of a second, and the aperture is f1.8, and the ISO is 100, not 800, 100 ISO. Now keep in mind, this is actually a softbox, which provides soft light, plus the light is actually cutting through 2 layers of diffusion. Right now the light is actually 4 feet away from her face, and this is what we get. Now here's another beautiful thing that this light can do for you. All this power you can reduce all the way down to 0.1%. So right now this light is actually at 0.1%, ISO 640, f1.8, and the shutter is 1/60th of a second. And this is what you get if you need the absolute minimum power without needing to change the light for something weaker. Now I don't have the example here right now, but let's say there's a huge window in the back in which we actually have to fight with the sunlight to expose the foreground and the background. I just want to show you what kind of apertures you get with this light right now. Just pretend you actually have a very bright window in the back. The ballast is actually set to 100% with the softbox. The shutter is 1/60th of a second, f5, ISO 100. Right now I have the ballast set to 20% again, but the color temperature on the ballast is set to 3200 degrees Kelvin, and the camera is currently set to manual 5600 degrees Kelvin. And right now I actually have the camera set to 3200 degrees Kelvin along with 3200 degrees Kelvin on the ballast, and this is what it looks like. Right now, just for fun, I'm actually going to be ramping down all the way from 2800 degrees Kelvin all the way to 6500 degrees Kelvin. So right now I have the ballast set to 2800 degrees Kelvin, which is slightly weaker than the other color temperatures. Then I have set to 3200 degrees Kelvin, and 5600, and 6500. You notice when we ramp down from 6500 degrees Kelvin all the way to 3200, the exposure is virtually the same. There's no like wow changes in exposure, which is great. Now I have the M600Bi with the reflector, and it's set to 0.1%. Camera settings set to 1/60th of a second, f1.8, ISO 100, not 800, 100. Right now we have the light at full blast, 100%. The camera settings are 1/60th of a second, f16, ISO 100. Right now I have the light set to 0.1% with the FLS10 Fresnel directly on her face, set to full spot. Then I'm going to show you how it looks like when you open it up. Now it's a full spot, which of course you have to gain a little bit on the brightness. Now the previous setting, the ballast was set to 0.1%. When you open to full flood, you have to actually compensate by bringing the percentage from the ballast all the way up to 3.7%. And before it was 0.1%. Now I have the light across the room, roughly 21 feet away. Now here's the light about 21, 22 feet away across the room, shining the light from that reflector, and it's bouncing at her. And this is what you get with the camera at 1/60th of a second, f2.2 ISO 100. If you crank it up to 800, you can actually have f5.6, or go back to 1/8, the shutter at 1/500th of a second. And if you put the light shining directly at the model, again, you're going to blind the model like I did before. As you can see, the M600Bi is slightly larger than the M600D. It's slightly about an inch longer than this light. The case overall is the same exact thing, other than they made a slight modification. This one here is permanently attached to the case. You cannot remove, which I actually like this better. But if you want to remove, they actually made this way here. There are Velcros here, so you can actually remove or leave it this way. You can adjust it by doing this, and this you can actually adjust by adjusting the belt here. Even though the cables are identical, but if you are picky, you can actually differentiate everything. So everything that's yellow belongs to the M600Bi, and everything that's black belongs to the M600D. In either one of these cases, everything is nice and padded, but they actually reinforced with some hard materials, you can see. I already reviewed this slide, so the cases are identical. The only difference with the unboxing is that the ballast is going to say M600Bi, and this one is going to say M600D, otherwise everything is identical. Here's a quick overview of the ballast. You gotta press and hold to turn it on. And obviously this is your DMX in and DMX out. And here's the actual shortcut for the menu. Press this button. Now the fan is off. To turn it back on, press it again. Right now it's currently set to auto. If you're shooting outside, especially hot days, I highly recommend that you have this unit set to high because it's gonna save you life on your LEDs. Now if you're shooting interview, all you have to do is to press this button here, the light fan is off. And even if you ran this light at 25%, it is actually brighter than the Godox FV150. And just so you know, this menu quits if you don't do nothing for about a few seconds. There you go, so you have to go back to the menu. But the good thing is you don't have to scroll down again here, up or down. It's already where the last setting was, so click again on the fan and there you go. If you don't want anybody to mess with the settings, press and hold this button. And then the lock icon is gonna appear here. Press it again, it takes about 2 or 3 seconds, maybe 4. It's out. To access the effects, press this button. There are 7 and times 3 different variations equals 21 different possibilities of effects. Here you see the effect already highlighted. Press this button to change to version 1, 2, or 3. Press the button again, you adjust the brightness. You can also press and hold to very quickly go all the way to 100%, all the way down to 0. To exit, press this button. Inside the menu, you have the wireless, Bluetooth, DMX, fan, dimmer, screen setting, language and reset, and also firmware upgrade. On the fan mode, press this button. You have auto, high, low, and off. At these settings, the fan is going to be running relatively low. When you actually start to crank things up like this, that's when the RPM picks up speed and it gets a little louder. But still for 730 watt, that's actually pretty quiet. Here's something to pay attention. Right now I have a single V-mount battery installed. It's supposed to give me 20% maximum output, but as long as you have the AC cord plugged in, you're still running AC no matter what. You have to unplug the AC cord, reboot the ballast, and then you're running DC with the V-mount batteries. So let's power that off. Unplug the cable, reboot the ballast. Also, very important, when you actually power this light, if you're actually using this light for a long time, you're going to see a warning here. So do not unplug anything from the outlet. Let the message go away, especially if you let people borrow this equipment or even if you rent this equipment. Make sure they know this, otherwise you're going to have some damage with the cob chip right here or some damage on the ballast as well. When you have a single 14.8 V-mount battery, your maximum brightness is going to be 20% regardless of the fan settings that you do in the ballast. When you add a second 14.8 V-mount battery, you're going to have a maximum brightness of 40%. When you add a single 26 V-mount battery, you're going to have a maximum brightness of 30%. When you add one single 14.8 volt and a 26 volt V-mount battery on the other side, you're going to have 50% of the brightness. And then when you install two 26 volt V-mount batteries, you're going to achieve a maximum brightness of 60%. Now, if you want to run this ballast via DC, you have to have a bunch of 26 volt V-mount batteries and a very large power bank feeding through the DC inlet on this ballast, and then in this case you're going to achieve 100% brightness. When the battery is dying, you're going to see this icon flashing. It's time to replace the battery. It is advisable that you don't wait until this happens, otherwise you're going to shorten the life of your V-mount battery. There is also a 48-volt inlet in case you have a battery system that can provide such power. Since I've done a review on the M600D before, with which the accessories they are identical, so I actually made a video of these things before, so I'm going to be actually borrowing some parts occasionally from the other video. When I opened the cardboard box and I removed this case, I immediately fell in love with this thing here. And would you look at this case? Everybody that I've ever seen open this case, they say, wow. You know, and this case is actually bulletproof, but besides that, look at what's the interior here. And I love these things here. So as you see, everything inside here is all crammed packed together here. If I was going to be renting this, which I definitely would not, but even if I did, people would probably have a hard time actually putting this back here, such as the ballast, which can go only one way. As you can see, the corners here, it only goes one way. Everything is so well secured in here that I actually put this case vertically and nothing falls or moves out of this case. And as you can see here, the supplied Godox velcros here, which is something that I really appreciate. It velcros everywhere, so there's no way this power cords and the cable here is gonna move to actually even touch the ballast right there. So this is the actual cable that powers the light. And the velcro secures it pretty good there. And here's the power cord, again very secure here, so this will never hit this thing. And as you can see how meticulous I am with my equipment, there's not even a speck of dust in here. Another thing that I really like what they did here, the actual V-mount holder is right under here. So everything is separate. And not only you can actually mount this on a stand or any pipe, this also features an adapter here in which you can actually mount on a desk or anything like a flat surface. One thing that I want to bring up here is because every single person that's reviewed this light here, they complain that this is actually wobbly, so the ballast is going to be wobbling all over the place. That's because when you actually receive this from Godox, this particular adapter here, as you can see there's an opening here, it goes right here where the screw is. Make sure you remove this, so right now as you can see it does not wobble at all whatsoever. So remove this piece, otherwise it's gonna do this. So take this off and no wobbling. And when you put this back in the case, make sure you do exactly what you see here, otherwise things are not gonna fit well. Make sure this is facing this way. This might sound a little silly how to remove the actual light, but I'm gonna show you anyway. It might make sense to some of you guys. First you remove this here. And then to grab this thing properly, just make sure you grab from here and also lift from the thing here. And then you twist it around, the light comes out like this. To put it back, make sure it is inserted at this angle right here. And then you do this. And make sure this is actually facing this way. And also, as you notice, no more that little baby pin kind of thing. This is actually a junior pin here. You just remove this screw right here and it becomes a very large mount for your combo stands right here. And here's the actual reflector. Make sure you do not throw this piece away because this prevents the light from actually scratching the actual reflector or causing any damage to it. And here's the ballast. The best way to remove it, don't grab it from here, grab it from here, from the edge right here. And this ballast also features a little padding on the bottom, which you can set on the table. And everything here is removable, including this part right here. You can actually take this whole thing out of the case and leave the whole thing bare bone. It also comes included with this as well, 3/8 and 1/4 inch. And here's the manual that nobody reads. There are actually very important information here in which I'm going to be covering the videos regarding the ballast. And when you buy the FLS10 Fresnel, it also comes with the same gorgeous bulletproof case. And here's what it looks inside. It has a little disc which is also removable to protect the glass, which is the same exact shape right here. Let's not forget that the Fresnel and the bar doors, they are separate purchases. They do not come included with the light. Now the light comes with the case, the Fresnel comes with the case. Why wouldn't this come with the case? Don't know, but check this out. I'm actually the best to find a case for absolutely everything. I don't care what it is. Check this out. How precise am I talking about? Check this out. You have your barn door with the case. Comes with everything that you need here. And there you go. Now let's talk about this Fresnel lens here. This is the Godox FLS10. They also make the FLS8, but keep in mind that this is not a proper reflector to go with the lights here because it is a smaller modifier. So the heat buildup here is going to be ridiculous. This is also in the manual. Do not use the FLS8 for a 600 watt light. That's more for the VL300 or VL150, something like that, but not for this light. Now this is actually made of glass here. This is not plastic, and it's quite heavy and very sturdy. And speaking of durability here, I was actually taking a B-roll Guess what happened? I put this thing on the turntable and I went over there to press record and I stayed there, and then this thing started to roll and pick up speed. I couldn't reach on time to actually get. So guess what happened? I have the table right here. That table is at least 4 feet high, and I actually watched painfully this thing fall on the ground and bounce. And it did not break. I actually spent half an hour making sure nothing was broken here, pointed this thing towards the start box to watch all the metal pins that actually make this possible here for you to do this here. So nothing broke at all. I was so lucky, but this thing actually did fall 4 feet high. So nothing was broken, front glass element perfect, and everything here is perfect inside and outside. Now, another thing that people will probably ask here, especially when you actually do a full spot, for example, right? And if you put the modifier this way or that way, as you press it down here, you see nothing moves. It's not gonna actually collapse on its own like this lens here, the 24-105 Canon. As soon as you point the camera this way, the thing's gonna zoom in, zoom out, I forgot, but the lens kind of... This is not gonna happen here. So whether you have the Fresnel this way here or this way, nothing happens. And then if you set it this way here, same exact thing. It's not gonna be expanding by its own. So again, the actual material in the front here is glass, but everything here is made of plastic, but it feels like metal, and it is very heavy. So it seems like it's gonna last for a long time, as long as you don't let it fall on the ground, because I was really lucky this thing did not break, because I have carpet here, but still, 4 feet high, fall. The FLS 10 Fresnel, you can actually go from full flood from 35 degrees to a full spot 10 degrees, and it projects about 46,400 lux at 3 meters away, which is about 9 times the intensity of this light with the bare bulb. The FLS 10 Fresnel is actually very affordable. You're talking here $199, and it does a very good job when you actually put the barn doors here to actually cut and shape the light. But it is not a razor sharp kind of a, light cutting on the wall over there. And people tell the nail light Fresnels, they actually are sharper than this one here. I'm not sure how much they cost, and I don't have one here, but other YouTubers, they're saying the nail light Fresnel actually is sharper than this here. But this actually does a good job for what I need. And here's the actual barn door. Everything is made of metal, and I love the paint job that they did this. You can actually hear the texture of the thing here. And when you open the doors, nothing droops. If it does, just tighten real quick here. You're gonna use a little tool on the other side for the little nut here, and then also a hex tool on the other side here, and you're good to go. But for right now, as you can see, the doors, they stay in place. And over here you have the actual openings here, as you expect with a professional barn door, so you can actually have more coverage when you actually cut or shape your light here. And on the back, this is actually made of plastic to actually ease up on the weight, and it also features this safety thing here, which is also removable. So as you can see, this thing is huge, as expected a professional barn door should be, but it could be huger, because if the doors were wide enough, even wider than this, you would actually have the ability to cut the entire, streak of light right there. So you're always going to have the shape from the barn doors here at the edges there. So make sure you actually have the lights placed wide enough so you can actually have enough coverage when you actually have a very tiny a little amount of light on the wall there. Right now I'm going to show you guys something unusual, because right here is the M600D for being daylight only. So all the daylight LEDs are everything that's in here, right? The bicolor, you have to share half tungsten and half daylight. Apparently these lights, they have the same brightness output. I have them placed exactly 1 meter away from the background. The distance right now doesn't matter, as long as the numbers don't change as soon as I put the light meter right here. So let's start the test. So ignore everything. The only thing they should pay attention are these numbers right here. Ignore the frame per second, the ISO, none of this stuff matters. This is the M600D. Let's crank it up to 100%. And let's see what we have. 11. And this one here, same thing, crank it up to 100%, and let's see what we have. From 11 to 11. That's amazing. It's like the same exact brightness. This is bicolor and this is daylight. Now only at 2800 degrees Kelvin this light gets a little weaker. Other than that, it's the same exact exposure throughout the entire color temperature range here. So right now I'm at 5600 degrees Kelvin. So let's do it again. F11, right? Now let's go 6500 f11.1, 3200. Let's see what we have. Okay, there's a slight drop right here. And at 2800 degrees Kelvin, you have this reading right here. So it's pretty much a half a stop down. If you want to use my M600Bi and Age affiliated links, I would appreciate it. It helps the channel and they don't cost you anything extra. I receive a small commission here, and again, it helps the channel. So thanks a lot if you do that. And that's the end of my review. I hope you enjoyed the content of this video, and I also hope you consider subscribing to the channel for more contents like this. And if you have any questions at all, please drop them in the comment section. I'll respond to everything that I see there. So once again, thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you next time.